African National Off-Road Championship, the Lesotho Sun Pennzoil Roof of Africa, traditionally a very tough event. Let's see how the cars did.
Africa's biggest sports.
Picturesque Maseru in Lesotho, with a calm before the storm as the final countdown starts for the Lesotho Sun Pennzoil Roof of Africa Rally. One of the toughest events of its kind in the world, the Roof of Africa Rally this year celebrated its 31st anniversary and provided the now traditional finale to a tough South African off-road championship. Just 7 points separated the first 3 crews in the special vehicle class. Sitting on top of the championship table were Bux Carolyn and Kenny Skoldhammer in the lubrication equipment raceco.
You know, you can't make any strategies now until Saturday. I think that the thing is just to get the car out, keep it together till Friday night, make sure you're handily placed, and then Saturday will be the race.
Leading the production vehicle category were reigning champions Arie Reyneke and Robin Houghton in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser. For Reyneke, it was an emotional time following the recent death of his wife Thelma in a motor accident.
Ons poging wat ons gaan aanwend is om klaar te maak. Ons gaan nie, soos in alle vorige kere het ek elke keer gesê ek kom om die roof te wen. Maar vanjaar sê ek kom om hom klaar te maak. My vrou Thelma en Robin. En as hy hierdie kampioenskappe wen, verdien hy sy nasionale klere. So ons gaan net om hom klaar te maak.
The traditional Round the Houses races have over the years developed into more than just the start of one of off-road racing showpieces. The Round the Houses is a major social and sporting outing on the Maseru calendar, with happy crowds thronging the streets of the Lesotho capital. Combined with the 60-kilometre time trial at Lance's Gap later in the day, the Round the Houses races determined the start order for Racing Section 2. Races like the Roof of Africa Rally are never won on the first day, but there's plenty to be gained from an early psychological boost. And 3 times winners, Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne in the Motortech Jimco, were quick to hit the front in the opening race for special vehicles. The route for the Round the Houses Bash combines dirt and tarmac sections. The ungainly-looking special vehicles are hardly built for ultra-quick street racing, but Schilling and Thorne drew first blood by winning their race. In the production vehicle category, the charge of the Heavy Metal Brigade was led by championship contenders Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert in the Pennzoil Land Rover, and Arie Reyneke and Robin Houghton in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser. A pair of Mitsubishi Pajeros were up with the leaders, with 3 Lada 4x4s entered by Russian crews in the thick of the fray. Cliff Barker revels in the Round the Houses fun, and on his way to victory wasn't afraid to slide the big Land Rover around. The 60-kilometre time trial was run in the Lance's Gap area, with Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne, who lives in Lesotho, at the front of the special vehicle field in the Motortech Jimco. The Jimco is an American import and features an interesting front suspension layout. Cars were sent off at 1-minute intervals, with Bux Carolyn and Kenny Skoldhammer second on the road in the lubrication equipment raceco. The pair were battling a gearbox problem and were being hauled in by Carolyn's elder brother Richard. Obert Carolyn was the first of the single-seater entries and was maintaining a steady gap ahead of Natal crew Derek Pinoy and Craig Jackson in the quick-fit raceco. There were also problems for Nick Harper and Andrew Chalupsky in the Pro-M raceco. Nardis Alberts and Peter Mathieu in the Rapsa raceco had made up a minute on Harper and Chalupsky and were set to move ahead of the Pro-M pair, with Alberts and Mathieu looking for their first finish on the roof. The unfortunate Harry Roscoe was cruising along with the Protea playing card raceco plagued by a misfire. Later in the day, Roscoe ended his race in a donga, but in the meantime was being reeled in by former champion Greg Harvey and Boy Stone in the Queen Motorspares raceco. Behind the Eastern Cape pair, championship contenders Franz Chepek Sr. and Jr. were steaming along in the V Motors raceco, with the pair running at the front of the Class B field. The father and son pair were being followed by Wilfried Weslau, who was sharing the single-seater Astoria raceco with Wolf-Peter Fumfai. Weslau lives in Maseru and had another local businessman, Alex Sally, hot on his heels in the Total raceco. Sally was partnered by Tony Carinas, with the pair springing something of a surprise by coming home first at the end of Racing Section 1. Sally and Carinas were nearly 2 minutes ahead of Weslau, with Harvey and Stone third. Richard Carolyn and the Alberts Mathieu combination completed the top 5. On the production vehicle front, Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert were running at the front of the field in the Pennzoil Land Rover. Trailing reigning champions R.P. Reinicker and Robin Houghton by 20 points in the championship, Barker and Joubert needed a win to keep alive their championship hopes. Following the tragic loss of his wife, Reinicker only confirmed his roof entry days before the event. Behind the Toyota pair, Caledon 400 winners Neil Woolidge and Paul Vermaak were going along steadily in the diesel-powered Mitsubishi Pajero, with the Natal crew in with an outside chance of taking the production vehicle championship. Colin Frankenberg and Roscoe Keeler were handily placed in the TSW Range Rover, with the pair running ahead of the Mitsubishi Pajero in the hands of Botswana crew of Schumi and Clinton van Vuren. The Van Vuren Pajero was already minus some bodywork, with the pair starting to come under pressure from Mike Redden and Heinrich Lattergan in the Storm Pennzoil Land Rover. Redden and Lattergan were ahead of Class E Championship frontrunners Llewellyn Anthony and Chris Birkin in the Toyota Hilux, with some interesting battles starting to shape up in classes D and E. In a tight finish to Racing Section 1, only 3 seconds separated Barker Joubert and Reinicker Houghton in the production vehicle category. The Woolidge-Vermaak pairing were a further 7 minutes adrift, while back at the overnight stop it was time to repair damage sustained during the opening salvos. The creepy crawly Hugbug was one of the casualties, along with the Carolyn Skoldhammer Raceco, which was undergoing a major gearbox rebuild. Despite having to rush spares in from Johannesburg, the ebullient Carolyn was as confident as ever.
Yeah, we got a problem. We got the automatic transmission fluids pumping back into the diff, and it looks like the seal in here is gone, and we've got seals coming from Joburg, so we pulled the engine out. We've prepped what we can, and then tomorrow we'll take the car out of the impound, fit the seal, go and beat them.
The Hans-Peter Hofhace Brett Snyman Raceco also ran into gearbox problems, but for some lucky crews, all that was required in preparation for Racing Section 2 was a little spit and polish. A good crowd was out to see the start of Racing Section 2, with overnight leader Alex Sally thinking more in terms of survival than extending his lead.
Obviously I went a bit too quick yesterday, so I think today we're gonna slow down a lot more and just take it easy and just get to the finish today. I think that's the main object, is just to get to the finish. We don't mind if we lose a lot of positions, but the main thing is just to get to the finish line today.
Alex Sally and navigator Tony Carinas got Racing Section 2 underway, with crews facing a 470-kilometre slog through some treacherous terrain. Racing Section 1 was kind to local entrants, with Wilfried Westlau starting second on the road in the Astoria Raceco. He was sharing with Wolf-Peter Fumfai, with the two drivers swapping positions at service points. The Roof of Africa might provide crews with some of the most breathtaking scenery you'll find anywhere in the world, but drivers and navigators are far too busy to appreciate the view. The start of Racing Section 2 was on the outskirts of Maseru, but it wasn't long before crews were struggling over some wicked terrain. At the front of the field, Alex Sally and Tony Carinas were soon finding it hard going in the Total Raceco. The Lesotho crew is relatively inexperienced in terms of national championship events, and behind them cars were queuing up. Westlau was still second on the road, and right behind him were Richard Carolyn in the single-seater lubrication equipment Raceco and the Schilling-Thorn Motortech Jimco. With its revolutionary swing-arm front suspension, the Jimco was looking comfortable over the rough terrain, and it looked to be only a matter of time before the three-time roof winners moved ahead of Carolyn, whose trademark approach is just keep lugging away. Still hoping for their first finish on the roof, the Alberts Mathieu combination was still going along steadily, with Natal crew Derek Pinot and Craig Jackson also looking in fine fettle in the opening stages of what was going to be a tough day. The cars provided plenty of early morning entertainment for young locals, with John Lambert and Hendrik Fourie starting to make up ground in the Digidor Raceco. The father and son pairing of Franz Czepek Sr. and Jr. were still very much in the championship hunt in the superbly turned out V-Motors Raceco. The Czepeks were at the front of Class B, with another Natal crew, Hilton Laurie and David Coombs, also making good progress in the HGM Raceco. It was also tough going in the production vehicle category, with the early morning sun making life even more difficult for crews. Overnight leaders Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert in the Pennzoil Land Rover were still at the front of the production vehicle fields and moved ahead of Nardus Alberts and Peter Mattia, who were making a few running repairs on the Rapsa Raceco. Reigning champions R.P. Reinicker and Robin Houghton in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser needed only to finish to make sure of a second successive championship, but the big production vehicles were finding it hard going. With Neil Woolwich and Paul Vermaak also going well in the Mitsubishi Pajero, the first three crews in the Production Vehicle Championship were 1, 2 and 3 on the road. As is so typical of the Roof, 1 minute crews were battling over incredibly rough terrain, and the next minute they were barreling along on good quality gravel roads. Woolwich and Vermaak were on one of the good sections, while Mike Redden and Hein Lattergan were still negotiating a rough patch in the diesel-powered Storm Pennzoil Land Rover. Llewellyn Anthony and Chris Birkin in the diesel Toyota Hilux were making good time on one of the better sections of road, while Colin Frankenberg and Roscoe Keeler were finding it tough going in the TSW Range Rover. It was slow going in patches, with the Range Rover suspension working overtime. The first hint of drama in the production vehicle category came when Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert ran into problems in the Pennzoil Land Rover. After a persistent misfire, the engine cut out and wouldn't restart, with Barker and Joubert losing mountains of time. While Barker and Joubert were stuck on the side of the road, Bux Carolyn and Kenny Skolthammer were making spectacular progress through the field in the lubrication equipment raceco. After their day one gearbox problems, the pair had picked up 9 or 10 places and were on a charge. Also charging towards the service halt were Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne in the Motortech Jimco, the ever-steady Richard Carolyn in the single-seater raceco, Wilfried Veslau in another single-seater raceco, and overnight leaders Alex Sally and Tony Carinas, who dropped down the pecking order. The inexperienced Total Raceco crew seemed to have settled for a steadier pace. As usual, there was plenty of drama at the service halts. Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne in the Motortech Jimco arrived with a flat right front tyre, and to make matters worse, they'd lost their spare wheels along the way. Borrowed replacements were strapped to the back of the Jimco, while Schilling enjoyed a cold drink and a quick cigarette. There was activity everywhere at the service halt, but Derek Pinoy and Craig Jackson had enjoyed a good run in the Quick Fit Raceco. The pair were lying fourth, with Pinoy in a relaxed mood.
The first 70, 80 k's was hell of a rough, but since then it's been nice, it's been great. This last about 80 k's is fantastic D-roads, it's great fun.
Off-road pit stops take a little longer than those in Formula One, but they can also alter running order. The Chepek father and son combination picked up a couple of places and moved into second place when they left the service area ahead of Richard Carolyn and the Pinoy Jackson car. R.P. Reinicker and Robin Houghton were the first of the production vehicles, with Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert putting in an appearance 20 minutes later. There were also more problems for Bux Carolyn and Kenny Skolthammer, who needed some major repairs. Back on the route, Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne were looking comfortable in a Motortech Jimco now carrying its full complement of spare wheels. Young locals always managed to find good vantage points on the roof, but there were no fireworks from the Chepeks at this river crossing. France Junior had now taken over the driving from France Senior, with their second position on the road not good enough to clinch the championship. Derek Pinoy and Craig Jackson had moved ahead of Obud Carolyn at the service centre. The Natal crew were now third, with the Johannesburg driver fourth and keeping the Carolyn flag flying. There were no frills when it comes to Carolyn's approach to off-road racing. He simply soldiers on at his own steady pace, and the lubrication equipment single-seater was right on the heels of the Quick Fit Raceco. Creeping up through the special vehicle field almost unnoticed were John Lambert and Hendrik Fourie in the Digidor Raceco. They were now a danger to those ahead of them, with the Astoria Raceco going along without any major problems. The Astoria car was now being driven by Wolf-Peter Fumfey, who has vast circuit racing, off-road and total Super Series experience. At the front of the production vehicle field, there'd been a dramatic change. Neil Woolwich and Paul Vermaak in the diesel Mitsubishi Pajero now led RP Reinicker and Robin Houghton in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser. With nearest challengers, Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert in trouble in the Pennzoil Land Rover, the Reinicker-Houghton combination had tightened their grip on the championship. A finish was all they needed to clinch the title, and there was no need for the pair to take chances in trying to catch Woolwich and Vermaak. Overnight leaders in the special vehicle category, Alex Sally and Tony Carinas in the Total Raceco, had gradually slipped further down the field. The pair were still running strongly, despite some serious repair work at the service area, but were more concerned with the finish than with fighting for places in the top 5. Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert were back on song in the Pennzoil Land Rover, but had plenty of ground to make up, with their championship hopes now in ruins. The big creepy crawly Hugbug, crewed by Arthur and Scott Abram, was sounding good, but they also had some leeway to make up. With the Motortech Jimco of Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne running into problems late in the day, Frans Čepek Senior and Junior moved into the special vehicles lead in the V-Motors Raceco. When all the final calculations were done, the Čepeks had a lead of around 1.5 minutes over the Motortech pair, with Richard Carroll in 3rd. John Lambert and Hendrik Fourie had moved up to 4th, with Pinoy and Jackson 5th. Čepek Jr. reflected on a hard day on the road.
Yeah, it was a tough, long day out there. We were trailing most of the day, until about 50 k's back when Schilling went over the edge of a cliff. He asked us to tow us out, but we couldn't because we had no clutch. So we trickled through to the end and eventually came in first, 1.5 minutes ahead of him.
There was also a late change in the production vehicle category, with Reinicker and Houghton regaining the lead from Woolwich and Vermaak, who chivalrously stopped to tow the Carolyn Skoldhammer Raceco out of a donga.
The hottest summer ever. 100% Summer Volume 4 is here with the hottest hits of the year. 100% Summer features Spice Up Your Life, Honey, Stay, Got Till It's Gone, Barbie Girl, Dot Dip, and many more. 100% Summer on CD and cassette now.
There was a distinct chill in the air prior to the start of the final day of the 31st Roof of Africa Rally, with the special vehicle and production vehicle championships still up for grabs.
It's tense, and obviously we're all fighting to, number 1, win the roof. Number 2, I mean, the championship rests between Frans, Bix and myself, and who wins today wins the national championship, so there's a lot at stake.
With overnight leaders Frans Čepek Senior and Junior first car away, crews faced another tough slog of nearly 500 kilometers through the Lesotho Mountains. There was another good turnout from interested local residents at the start, and no one knew more about the ordeal that lay ahead of long-suffering crews than another local resident, Wilfried Veslau.
As a local man, as you said, we made some of the routes years ago. We found the routes, made them. I remember them. I haven't been there for a long time since I'm racing. And I tell you, the country is washed away, I think, from heavy rains. You find sometimes 1 meter deep holes where there was a good track not long ago. And I'm racing a Spaceman with a good suspension, and still I'm shaking around. I don't want to sit in a bucky in this race. That is the only thing I tell you.
Frans Čepek Senior won the Roof of Africa Rally in 1976 and 77. Now, 20 years later, he was again leading one of the world's toughest events and was also chasing the South African Championship. Richard Schilling won the roof 3 years in a row from 1990, and he and Ashley Thorne, who shared in Schilling's 93 win, were chasing after the Čepeks and the National Championship as well. Richard Carolyn was producing another of his no-nonsense performances and was going along steadily in 3rd place in the lubrication equipment single-seater. Brother Bix and Kenny Skoldhammer were giving chase in the 2nd lubrication equipment Raceco, with Skoldhammer the only man to have won the roof on 2 and 4 wheels. John Lambert and Hendrik Fourie were also going along steadily in the Digidor Raceco, with Alex Sally and Tony Carinas right behind them in the Total Raceco. RP Reinicker has won the roof twice and come in 2nd 4 times, and he and co-driver Robin Houghton had a tight grip on this year's production vehicle championship. The dealer team Land Cruiser pair were ahead of Woolwich Vermaak and Barker Joubert, the only 2 crews who could catch them in the championship. Neil Woolwich, who's also won the roof on 2 wheels, and Paul Vermaak were a solid second in the Mitsubishi Pajero, with Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert on a charge to make up for lost time on day 2. It was tough going, but there were solid performances from Mike Redden and Hein Lattergaan in the Storm Pennzoil Land Rover. Llewellyn Anthony and Chris Birkin were on course for a top 5 finish in the diesel Toyota Hilux, and after problems on day 1, Arthur and Scott Abraham were fighting their way through the field in the big creepy crawly Hugbug. Behind the Hugbug, traffic was building up, with survivors now intent on simply making it to the finish in vehicles that had taken a terrific battering over 3 days. Mike Potgieter and Herman Griese in their Toyota Hilux were heading for their first finish in the Roof of Africa Rally. The 31st Roof of Africa Rally was now entering its final stages, with competitors on the first of 2 loops that would take them to the finish. With the going tougher than anyone expected, the second loop was to be cancelled because of time restraints, with Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne now more than an hour ahead of the Chepek father and son combination. The Chepeks lost time through taking the wrong route, and behind them there'd been a change in the order, with John Lambert and Hendrik Fourie moving ahead of Richard Carolyn in the single-seater lubrication equipment raceco. This was the closest battle of the race, with Wilfried Weslau and Wolf-Peter Fumfai still going strong in the total raceco. Reigning champions R.P. Reinicker and Robin Houghton still had a tight grip on the production vehicle category in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser, but behind them Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert were making a brave fight of it in the Pennzoil Land Rover. They'd moved ahead of Neil Woolwich and Paul Vermaak in the Mitsubishi Pajero and were right on the heels of the Land Cruiser. Corrected time at the finish was going to be a critical factor in the duel between Barker Joubert and Woolwich Vermaak. One always expects late drama on the Roof of Africa Rally, and just 6 kilometers from the finish, the Motortech Jimco, driven by Richard Schilling and Ashley Thorne, ground to a halt with a major roadside repair job needed. Ashley Thorne's expression said it all, as Frans Chepek Senior and Junior went past the stricken Motortech Jimco, and victory for the father and son crew also gave them the South African Special Vehicle Championship. It was a cruel blow for Schilling and Thorne, who were finally classified 5th. Richard Carolyn finished just 7 minutes behind the Chepeks, with solid performances from Lambert Fourie and the Weslau Fumfai combination. It was a great moment for the Chepeks, with Frans Senior winning his 3rd Roof of Africa 20 years after his last victory. It was also a great moment for R.P. Reinicker, who put his grief behind him to win the production vehicle category, and along with Robin Houghton, take the championship for the 3rd year running.
Ek is baie bly ons het gekom en ek is bly dat ons gewen het vandag. Ek is bly vir Robin se pad. Want dit is nou die 3de keer in 'n ry wat ons die Suid-Afrikaanse kampioenskappe wen. So ek glo ek dink hy behoort daarom ten minste nou sy sprongklere te kry.
This program is dedicated to the memory of Thelma Reinicker, who died in a road accident on November the 13th, 6 days before the Roof of Africa Rally. She'll be sadly missed by all who knew her.